Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback Podcast. This week, I'm really excited to have on the show Matt Phipps. Matt Phipps is actually someone I know through the online Amazon world, and through his military background has created this accountability program which keeps me on my toes every week. But that's that's just how I know Matt. Matt himself has served a successful 22-year career in the Royal Air Force, working his way through the ranks to become a lieutenant colonel. The job's taken him some pretty cool places, like Kabul in Afghanistan and Baghdad in Iraq. In terms of his health, though, it was around 10 years ago that he noticed he had a few tick bites, which at the time wasn't really much of a concern to him. But then it was around 2019 when he started to notice some pretty severe symptoms, debilitating fatigue, and particularly some issues with his legs, severe muscle weakness. This was all happening whilst he chose to launch a business at this time and run that business with his wife. And so the difficulty of actually raising a young family, moving from place to place with his job in the military, launching and running a successful business has taken its toll. And from a mental point of view, Matt actually told me this has been a couple of the most difficult years of his life. But fast forward to today, Matt is much improved. His business has taken off and he's doing multi-seven figures, and he's actually finally retiring from the RAF this year on New Year's Eve. Did you say?
That's right. Yep.
Nice. So yeah, I think this is really interesting because the people I've had on the show so far have been very much on the other side of their comeback, and they can look back at it with a lot of hindsight and maybe not as kind of scarred from the experiences as kind of when you're actually in it. You've come so far in such a short period of time actually, in terms of your recovery, but you're still there, you're still figuring stuff out. So I think it's really interesting to have someone like you on, that you've still got that mental battle on a daily basis, the ups and downs, the waxing and the waning of these kinds of conditions. So I did actually miss to actually say that you were diagnosed with Lyme disease in 2019. That was the cause of those symptoms. So yeah, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, bud. Great to be here.
Cool. So let's, in terms of your actual health story, let's take it back to 10 years ago when you first first noticed those tick bites, because I think that's really interesting and it resonates with me actually, because that's what happened to me. I had this tick bite and I had symptoms initially, but then it wasn't until years later that it really manifested itself into what it is today. Could you just give the story on that, and then also just through to kind of 2019, and then the story of going from going from doctor to doctor, perhaps, if that's what happened, and how you've kind of got to the point that you're at today?
Yeah, no worries at all. So yeah, back to the little ticks then. I think it was really 2009, 10. I was serving in Germany, and I looked down in the shower one day and there was a tick with its head buried in my leg. I didn't have any previous knowledge of ticks or anything like that, so it's a pretty horrific thing if anyone's ever had a tick bite, to see a creature half submerged in your calf muscle. So a bit of Googling and managed to get him out. I don't know how long he'd been in there. Significantly, I didn't have a bullseye rash or any signs of infection or anything there, because obviously that's what doctors look for, that initial reaction, and then they'll put you on antibiotics. So I pulled it out, never had any problems, no illness, no rash, nothing. I think it was about a year later, I was mountain biking in the Cotswolds in the UK, and came home, and again I had another smaller tick, this time in my leg. Pulled it out, and again, no symptoms, no rash. And generally speaking, with ticks, if you can get them out within 24 hours, then you shouldn't suffer any kind of infection. So they both were removed from my leg, and I didn't have any other problems after that. I went on for my next years of my career. I was sporty. I played rugby, football, hockey, athletics, everything I could. Really enjoyed my sport, and was fully active. And then kind of got to 2018 when I was serving in the States. So I've just got back from 4 years in Alabama and Maryland in the US. And 2018, I started to kind of go downhill fatigue-wise. You start off thinking, am I just tired? Do I need to sleep more? Slow down a bit, do more exercise, and you start questioning yourself. But really, it got to the point where I was struggling to like stand up for more than a few minutes. I was always looking for a chair constantly. And at this stage, I was commuting to and from work for 45 minutes at a time. So I would jump in a car, feel tired, kind of lift myself gently out of the car, come home, and I'd just be wiped out for the evening, And with a wife and daughter living with you, it's challenging to be the dad and the husband that you need to be, and to kind of bring yourself to make dinner, to help around the house, or just to be fun and enjoyable. So 2018, 2019 were a couple of kind of quite dark years for that, quite depressing. The job wasn't fantastic in the States. I love the people and the place, but because I was a foreigner, I got a lot less work than I was used to. So it was kind of, maybe some people's dreams to have a nice, easy job, but for me, I like it kind of challenging and what have you. That actually turned out to be a blessing because, I was struggling with fatigue. I had some really good friends there who took me to the gym at lunchtime a few times a week. We used to go and work out together. And over that period, 2018 to 19, I could do less and less. And then one day it kind of struck me. I just sat down in the middle of the gym on the floor with my legs, watching everyone else work out around me. And it got to the point where I just couldn't stand up anymore. It's a very strange feeling. It's not like lactic acid from going for a run. It's not like sleepiness. It just feels like your body's run out of energy. Specifically, my legs were really struggling. So I just found myself sat down in the gym. I'd started to take action. I got in with some doctors, and that's when the classic doctor roller coaster that many of your listeners and guests will have heard about. I saw a neurologist who tested me for Lyme disease straight away with a blood test for the antibodies, which obviously weren't there. He tested me, looking at things like multiple sclerosis. He did a nerve function test on my legs. That was clear. He dismissed me. I then saw vascular surgeons to check the blood flow because specifically my symptoms were manifesting in my legs more than anything. And it was this kind of weakness standing up that I suffer with. So I saw vascular guys. I saw endocrinologists who were checking to see if my body was eating its own muscles and things like that. So all of these nasty conditions. I saw a second neurologist. They did another nerve function test. I had scans on my calf muscles, my thighs, my lower back. I saw orthopedic surgeon as well. They did a scan on my lower back, my upper back, my neck. In America, they love to scan you. In the UK, you have to wait months, and you're lucky if you get more than an X-ray. But I must have come home glowing from the US because I had so many scans around that time. And that was all over the course of a year in the US military system. Met some great doctors, really nice people, and every single one of them almost pretty much shrugged. If you look very closely, you could see them shrug at the end and tell me I was fine and there was nothing wrong with me. And I would go home, I would be exhausted, I couldn't stand, just really struggling with fatigue. And at that point, I kind of was dipping and really just, didn't know where to go next. You just get to that point where you just, okay, I've just literally seen 5 very fine professionals from all different specializations. I've Googled the heck out of this. At this time, obviously, I didn't know anything about ticks or Lyme disease or anything, really hadn't thought about that, but because they were looking at all of those neurological degenerative conditions. So it wasn't until probably around Christmas 18, my wife gave me probably the most useful Christmas present I've got. It was an appointment with an integrated medicine doctor in Maryland called Turning Point, ironically. Really good name for an integrated medicine doctor. and I met with a doctor there, and she sat down, went through my whole symptoms and everything for 20 minutes. She then took blood samples, sent them off, and there were 3 pages of results, which for those of you who've had blood tests, you usually get a few tests, especially in the UK again. We're a bit tighter with our blood tests. Over there, you see an integrated med doc, and they can put that on the insurance, on your medical insurance as well. So there's no cost really, just, $400, I think it was, for the appointment. Those results came back, and they do a test called the Western blot test, which is like an advanced test for Lyme disease. So it detects the proteins for the antibodies that show you've got Lyme disease. So it's far more sensitive. One of those proteins was present on my test. You're meant to have 3 for the CDC to say that you have Lyme disease. I had 1, but because I had other factors elevated and depressed, the doctor said, I think you've got Lyme disease, just on the basis. It's kind of weird science that they can look at this bank of results, and that's really where these integrated med docs earn their money. Then they can interpret them and go on. It's not like concrete science, but they have a much better idea than anyone else. No one would give you a Western blot test in the system. I even mentioned it to my GP here. He said, I don't know what that is, and I've got no way to help you with Lyme disease if you haven't just been bitten. So I got hope. They then put me on a course of antibiotics, so standard kind of doxycycline for that, and a whole bank of supplements, which were a few $100 a month, to boost my immune system, to get me back going again, but at the same time to start killing these bacteria in my system. I went back a few months later, and the results I had again the same. There were more proteins active for Lyme disease, so that pretty much confirmed my body had woken up to this infection, which it turns out had been probably in my body for 10 years. I could have been bitten later, but I'm guessing 10 years. And the doctor said, basically, you've got this chronic condition, you were bitten then. Most likely that was the cause. And over the 10 years, your immune system has just been fighting so hard, it's now got to the point where it can't cope anymore. It's just overwhelmed with fighting. And so, this is where you're at. So a second course of antibiotics, more supplements as well. Through 2020 this year, through to summer, kind of got me back going again. The fatigue, I'd say, went from kind of 80% bad down to probably 25, 30%. And I have good days and bad days now, but that really did help with the fatigue. And seeing those integrated med doctors really kind of helped me on that side of things. So
thanks for talking us through that. So in terms, I guess let's take it back to the mental side of things. When you're going, because a lot of people listening to this will be nodding their head, as I was, just like, the amount of scans you had. If I'd been able to do that in the UK, I would have done that. But as you say, they're tight. But when you're going to those doctors and you're there's that desperation inside of you that you want this to be the visit where it clicks and something happens, but then it doesn't. Mentally, what were you going through? What was your thought process? And was it all negative? Like, how did you kind of get over those bumps in the road?
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, it just fills you with hopelessness when you get back negative blood results or a negative test on your body. It just completely deflates you. You get to the point where you want them to find something bad wrong with you so you can have an answer, because it's better to have an answer and push forward than not knowing what you've got, not wishing to have something bad like multiple sclerosis or any more debilitating illnesses that people suffer from. But certainly you want them to say, yeah, you've got this, here's the treatment, or this is how you manage it. But each time they just kind of shook their head, and you go away, and I wouldn't leave that room without them referring me to someone else. So that was my strategy, really, was to keep that hope going, refer me to the next doctor. Okay, so what about this specialist? What's this specialist as well? So you do your own research, and that was the thing that kept my spirits going that year. But yeah, it was becoming harder and harder just to kind of keep going through that year. And that's the same year kind of we got the business going as well. So it was full on. And I think kind of bridging across to the business, in like 2018, I was working out what to do next from the Air Force. I was ready to leave. 22 years is a long time in the same job, although we move every 2 years typically. Fantastic career, really enjoyed it, enjoyed the traveling, but I wanted to do something more creative, something where I could work from home and stop moving around. Probably a good thing as well, actually, given, you know, that my health declined so much over the last couple of years, not to be pushing on with the military, because you know, I just don't have enough energy for, you know, a squadron of people who need you and need to lean on you. So it's the timing's quite well. But the fact that, you know, I decided to launch this e-commerce business with Kata back in April 18 really gave me a goal and something to focus on. And we'd launched our products September 18, and straight away we were selling and flying and struggled to keep up with demand. And we realized that we were onto something. So now, you know, we've built the business out to have a 7-figure revenue. And we're just consumed by the business now, obviously, and working from home as I'm on resettlement and, you know, just seeing out the rest of my days from the military. You're meant to be finding a new job, but for me, I'm already kind of working on my new job. Yeah. But the reason I talk about the business, not to divert across, is because it gave me hope. And I think to have something to aim for, something to get up for each day, and drive you forward is what kept me going, I think, for these last 2 years. So my job at work had slowed down because I couldn't do much, and was, you know, demoralizing at times, but actually building this business at the same time, it gave me that free energy and headspace to start building this business in my spare time in the evenings. So I'd come home and, you know, be battling the fatigue, but at the same time, we had this exciting new business that we were bringing to life. So really, that's how you kind of overcome the doctors, find the next doctor, and find something to keep you focused on.
Yeah, there's so much there that resonates with kind of myself and what I've tried to do. I've always had to have something that I'm working health-wise, that I'm working towards. There has to be that, and whenever there hasn't been that next step, that's something else I'm kind of like waiting on doing, or that next treatment or that next test. That's when the mental side of it gets really, really hard, because the hope starts to, you know, reduce significantly when you've just got that kind of, you know, abyss of just, you know, what is going on. But then also that, yeah, I've only kind of more recently gone in the process of starting my own business, and it really does take up a lot of my headspace in a good way, and just makes life so much more exciting, and actually gives me my control back, because I'm not working for someone else. And I imagine, you know, you now not having to commute to the military, you know, you're not on someone else's time frame like that. Also mentally has helped you in that way. Is that right?
That's huge. Yeah, absolutely huge. You know, I was doing 45 minutes each way to work. I was using that time to listen to podcasts from Danny McMillan and others, and learning my trade on the way to and from work. And then in the evenings, kind of applying that. And that kind of focus in the business was just, you know, huge for me to focus. But now I'm actually working from home. I'm still in the Air Force, but they could give you kind of, you know, terminal leave, they call it, where you use the time to spend a job. So I'm already living the freedom lifestyle that we pursue, you know, Amazon e-commerce sellers, to work for yourself, to work from home. So this morning I dropped my daughter at the bus, which I would never have done before. I took the dog for a walk at the same time, and, you know, we're in the park. The park's covered in frost, the sun's coming through the trees, and life is good. And with that space, I can cope and overcome, you know, any debilitating illnesses I've got or anything like that. I've got time to, you know, I've just done some exercises this morning, have an, you know, easy breakfast, hydrate properly, eat well, and do stuff I enjoy around the home. Whereas in my previous life, I would have been driving to work and then getting stuck into probably some quite intense work, and then coming home, getting home at 6 p.m. So, you know, the transition from lifestyle, other than giving me the business and the change of direction I want, has been huge for me health-wise and freedom-wise. I've really, really enjoyed it so far.
What's really interesting about that is that you've ultimately made your life a lot better, a lot easier in what you're doing. But to get there, I guess, you've had to push through significantly, because you could have quite easily And I did the same, and I just left my job because I wanted to kind of just focus on my health, and that actually made me put my life on hold rather than actually trying to have something to go after and something to focus on, because I believed I should only focus on my health. And what you've done is actually have something that could distract you from your health whilst you try and recover. And that's the thing that's really kind of, from what I can tell, your life hasn't really gone on hold. It might have done mentally a little bit, but you've pushed forward in the 2 years, which have been some of the most difficult 2 years of your life. You've actually progressed more than you had in the previous 20 years. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, definitely. It's been 2 years of huge change, and under massive stress. When you don't have fatigue and you come home and you want to start applying the things you've learned, listening to in the car, and you've just had a long day at work, plus you're wiped out. The fact that you can sit down and do that and push forward was huge. So I think so too. It's difficult family-wise as well, because our daughter now hates the word Amazon, because I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people who have businesses at home. It kind of draws a lot of your energy, especially in the first year or two when you literally consumed. You have very few staff, and it's difficult with Kata as well, because we both work together. So we're both on that roller coaster of stresses that owning your own business. It's just a series of problems they throw at you. So we're hanging on through that roller coaster as well, and trying to look after our marriage. So I have to find energy for the marriage as well. And people say you can only do so much: work, fitness, hobbies, marriage. And some people say you can only do 3 of those. So which is you're not going to focus on. And most people will drop the fitness aspect. It's been hard for me. I've not been as good a husband to Kata as I have, because of the other commitments there. I've not given her as much energy or as much time as she deserves. So she suffered definitely. But the business just kind of draws it away. But having all that going on, whilst being ill, has definitely made it like a super hard. If it was a computer game, you'd pick the top challenge level.
Yeah. But absolutely, I think to anyone listening to this who has maybe decided to put a few things on hold for the last few years whilst they kind of, focus on getting better, maybe this will just, encourage them to, not go at it full tilt, just maybe have another look at it again and just get, make that first step into kind of, pushing their life forward outside of their health, which is definitely something that's really, really helped me. Something you've talked about, you mentioned a few times, is your relationship with Kata, also your daughter. I want to talk a little bit about relationships, and I think it's really important, because people going through a chronic health issue, living with, or not just your wife, your kids, but also friends also that know you, but they can't feel what's going on with you. And I know from reading a lot online, people feel quite alienated, around these people, because they don't get it. I'm quite lucky, because I've got people around me who they get it as much as they can without actually having it, I guess. But even still, it's still really difficult. How has this affected your relationships, and in your family and also outside of your family, and how much of that has that had an impact on your mental state, and what have you done to help that?
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm lucky in that I'm mobile. I'm going to work. I'm opening a business. A lot of people with chronic conditions are in bed and barely get 2 or 3 days a week. So I hugely sympathise with those guys, and I feel super lucky that I'm still mobile. So relatively, my symptoms are a lot milder compared to those extreme cases. I'm in Lyme disease groups, which incidentally on Facebook there's 20,000 members in this Lyme disease group, and almost all of them aren't cured. There's a few that stayed in there, but almost all of them are still fighting, still battling, looking for answers, what works, what doesn't work. So you get the sense that there's this huge community out there, and they talk about the mental impact as well. I think that was probably the hardest thing for me over the 2 years that you've struck on, is being present for my family, not only because of the business commitment, just because you're just not up for talking to anyone. You're just wiped out. You've got nothing left in the tank. And then the expectation is that you're there as a father and a wife. And, you know, although I've explained it all to Kata and she supported me, I think it's been really hard to kind of give myself fully to her. Something simple like, you know, going out on a date once a week. It puts a strain on your marriage because your wife sees that as, you know, a lack of interest in investing in her, quite rightly. But actually, for me, going out is a big effort. Standing up is a huge effort. I'm looking for a seat after 3 minutes. So going to the supermarket will probably wipe me out for the rest of the day, most of the time. You know, it's just, I've gone from exercising to just standing up and going out and doing the shopping as an activity. So to go out, do something like that, come back and then be present, I just want to collapse, you know, on the sofa, or like where I am right now in front of my computer doing work. So again, it seems like I'm doing work all the time, but actually this is a really comfortable place to sit. It's a nice chair. I've also got my feet up in front of me when I need to. So it's really comfortable, but to other people, that is just me focusing on other things other than them. But to get up and have that energy, it's been really hard and still a struggle today. And it's something I'm trying to balance and give back.
Have you had outside of your family, have you had other people that because they see you know, you look healthy, they can see you, as you say, you are mobile, you might not be working out and whatnot, but have you had almost, do you get the sense that maybe people don't understand it, or maybe they, you know, they doubt how much of an impact it has had on your life?
Yeah, it's not been too bad for me because I'm able to mask my symptoms. You know, when I was with my military peers at work, I was able to mask them quite well because I'm desk-based most of the time. When people will talk to me, I'm at my desk, I'm quite happy, but, you know, moving around and stuff. Obviously, the guys would give me pressure to come to the gym quite a lot. Come on, let's go, let's work out. And I'd be like, oh, I really can't. Because I knew that I would then go home, I would be wiped out. And Kata would actually say to me, why do you keep going to the gym? You just come home and you're wiped out. So I would have then this balance of the guys at work, you know, leaning on me to come and work out, which is a really good thing to do at lunchtime at work. You enjoy stuff, and it's pretty normal business for the military to work out during that time. So things like that. But my bosses and stuff didn't really lean on me or have noticed because I could still do the work. You know, I'd have days of brain fog, not as bad as the likes of Danny McMillan and others where they just can't think, but I did have quite a few of those brain fog days where you're just not that effective. So yeah, outside of that, my mum's great, my dad's great. They both kind of understand and support me. My mum's quite health and nutrition based as well, so she's been really supportive over the years, putting out endless research articles and firing them at me and supporting me. So family-wise, it's been great. Kata's always been there for me as a wife as well, and super understanding and patient with me. Although, like I said, it kind of transpires as a lack of affection and care for her. And that's something, that balance is what I'm working on, but actually it's just more like I just don't have it for anyone. But it seems like I've got enough energy to sit here and run a business, but that's because it's kind of just me staring at a screen. I find it a lot easier. So yeah, I think generally people have been supportive. Kata suffers herself from pernicious anemia, where your body doesn't absorb vitamin B12, and she went years undiagnosed from that and suffered from neurological damage herself. So she's had her own battles, and lots of other things on top of that, where half the time she's been a patient, the other half I've been a patient. So together we feel like a 60-year-old couple, kind of pottering around the place now, but actually we're still working on a business. But yeah, we've both been pretty sedentary, I'd say, and fighting through together. But it doesn't always work like, come on, Team Phipps, let's feel crap together. It transpires into someone's in a mood, someone else is in a mood or tired. And so that kind of dynamic is difficult for the other person to understand, I think, when you just feel like crap.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult because I'm fully aware of the impact my situation has had on my girlfriend. You know, I'm sitting in my new build apartment at the moment that I forced her to move to because we had to move from our old place due to mold and we had to be in a new build to get away from that, and just loads of stuff, having to me traveling all over the place to try and get treatment. And it sometimes can be easy to get I guess so deep into your own worries about your own health, and it becomes easier to forget about your impact on them. So it's such a fine balance that is impossible to strike, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a balance I haven't got right at all, and something I'm very conscious of now. And perhaps, starting to get a bit more space with not having a job and a business. I'm starting to run out of excuses as to why I can't, make more time and space. So it's definitely something I'm actively working on, those relationships, and with my daughter and my son as well, giving them more of my time and energy. Literally like finding time in the day to call them or spend time with them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so let's just go back to in terms of there must have been I guess a point where the mental side of things really kicked in, because you would have had all of those knockbacks when you were going from doctor to doctor to doctor, and there must have been a big part of you that was like, I'm just gonna, maybe I'm just gonna have to accept that this is how things are. What was it inside of you that made you say, no, I'm not going to accept this, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to force myself through this, I'm going to launch my business, my life's not going to be impacted as much as it could be? What was it that mentally happened there?
Yeah, I've always been the kind of just get your head down and push through guys. I could talk about cliches of military training and that sort of thing, but it does absolutely have an effect on you, from basic training where they're shouting at you, being tough on you, to stressful situations, to being deployed in Iraq where you're working 18-hour days and making decisions that have impact on people's lives and stuff like that. And then at the same time, while you're away for places like Afghanistan, you're away from your family for 6 months or so. You don't get to see them. I was away when my daughter was only 2, which was really tough for 6 months. And that's still kind of, I see old videos of that, and that has an impact on me. So I think it's an element of that training and pushing through and overcoming adversity. It's definitely in my genetic makeup to do that and to push forward no matter what happens. So you just kind of get your head down, push through and do that research. But if I'm honest, I think the turning point towards my recovery was the fact that Kata said, right, enough of your complaining. I've bought you an appointment with this doctor. So she's been wonderful. And, that got me off that scale of all of these useless specialists. Well, useless for me anyway, but not generally, to seeing an integrated medicine private doctors who got me on the path with supplements and antibiotics, and really kind of kicked me into gear. So it was maybe Kata had enough of me complaining. So that was a big turning point. And then when you kind of start getting that hope and you start getting answers from blood tests and things, it just kind of gives you a whole new perspective. And I start improving diet and trying different things to do that.
I feel like we might need to get Kata on just to get her side of things. And
yeah, she'll probably complain about me for an hour.
There probably should be a separate podcast for partners of people with chronic health issues.
That's definitely a niche podcast, definitely. Suffering wives and husbands, yeah.
I thought what I got from that as well is that, and I guess to anyone listening, is that ultimately you will, if you keep going, something's going to come up. Obviously for you, it was great that's something that came up was actually presented to you by your wife, but it could come in any form, as long as you actually aren't prepared just to stand still. And if at the third hurdle you've just gone, oh right, they're telling me I'm fine, I'm just going to deal with this, you could have just sat, just got worse and worse and worse. But it was that that pushing on. So I think that's amazing for people to listen to in their own battle at the moment.
It's a financial challenge as well, I think, and you'll be even more acutely aware of this as you've travelled and done some extreme therapies. But something like $500 for a doctor's appointment, and then $300 a month for supplements. Not everyone has $800 in their first month to invest in their health, and then $300 thereon, and then another doctor appointment. So it is very, for those of the world that don't have that kind of spare cash, it's really hard to get on that ladder of help, and you really do need to pay someone to overcome these things quite often. If you've exhausted all of the doctors and the options, then you need to find that money from somewhere to invest in this, and it's absolutely life-changing to do it. But people need to commit the cash, unfortunately, to make this progress, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is really difficult to people who can't can't afford that. But I think, yeah, I've ended up committing so much money to it, and I will continue to do that. It doesn't even cross my mind now. The amount of money that I would have now, had I not gone and done all these things, is crazy. But I don't regret it, because nothing is more important. Like, money just can't compare to feeling healthy, and improving all of those other things in your life, your business, your relationships. So something I just quickly want to talk about is, what can you take? Are there things that you could take from this whole experience that you're actually really grateful for? So, like a sliding doors moment, you didn't have those tick bites. You've continued on. What do you think has been kind of that's happened that's a lot better, and the positives and the things that you're grateful for as a result of actually having your illness?
Yeah, that's a good question. What to be gratitude? We talk about it a lot in the house, and Kat is quite big on gratitude as well. So I think you need to be. I'm thankful that it's not a lot worse. I think, and that's a big thing. And that, I've now got the resources to pay for treatment and stuff like that. But I think it's kind of given me the space, going to what turned out to be my last job in the military. And then starting on a business journey, it's kind of gave me the space there to really kick on with the business, and that extra motivation to yes, I need to change my lifestyle now. I think it was late 2019 in November, I got offered my next job in the military, and it was to command an RAF station back in the UK, which for most people is the pinnacle of their career, and would have been for me, having a unit with 300 personnel that you're responsible for. It would have been an amazing opportunity to look after those guys and to bring that unit forwards. And I had a 2-week period where I needed to decide to accept that or end my career and become full-time business owner in e-commerce. And that was a really tough 2 weeks. And I think the fact that I had my health condition on top played quite a big role in making my decision to stay home, because I wouldn't have been able to give enough energy to all those guys who would have needed and deserved it. So I think that kind of sliding doors moment would have been at that point there, and it's kind of ultimately got me to where I am now, which is sat home in a beautiful Kent village with the sun shining and wondering when I'm going to make my next cup of tea, rather than being worried about disappearing off for 6 months on a next journey or something like that. So I think that's probably the biggest effect.
I think I need to move to Kent, because I'm in London and the weather is awful.
Don't get me wrong, it's been raining for 2 weeks. For those not in England, it's horrible at this time of the year. But when the sun comes out and we have a frosty morning like this, it's just the most amazing place.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Not in London.
Yeah. So to someone who's listening right now, you mentioned those groups on Facebook, and I've talked about them a number of times. I think they can be quite powerful for people, but they're not also at the same time really just a hotbed of negativity, and people can potentially use them without meaning to use them in the wrong way, and it becomes a place for negative therapy almost. But for someone in that, my hope is that, because I do promote these episodes in these groups, and my hope is that people from those groups listen to this and use it as a source of positivity. So speaking to people in those groups, you mentioned that group of 20,000 people, speaking to those people who are really in the thick of it right now and kind of don't see any way out, what would be your advice to them from not from a practical point of view, although if you do have any tips, then let me know, but more from a mental point of view to keep them going and to get them to the point where where you're at now, where you're not there, but you're happy, you're moving your life forwards, you've health-wise you feel so much better. What would be your advice to these guys?
I think that the biggest thing, use those groups certainly more as a resource for finding information and knowledge. there will be some support in there, because the people that are suffering the same thing, and it's so reassuring when you read something and you're like, that's exactly what I feel. You and I just chatting now is kind of therapeutic for us, because there's another human out there that's suffering similar symptoms to you. So I think it can be a good source from that. I think use the search function in those groups to find things out about specific symptoms or things, because for me that's a lot more useful than medical research. Lyme disease and all these other chronic conditions that you talk about on the show, they are almost completely guesswork. There are lots of studies and trials that have been done, but these take decades and decades, and they don't have the answers yet to what causes them. It's too easy just to say, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, you've got fibromyalgia, or your body's just attacking itself. They don't know that. They don't understand at the cellular level exactly what's going on. So the answers you're looking for aren't out there, but actually when you get into these groups and you have a body of something as big as 20,000 in the US Lyme disease group, you could really actually start to see some data points of what's working for people, what's not working for people. So it's a great place to get ideas for treatments, although you need to be careful not to just keep tracing different treatments. You need to speak to your doctor and work with them. So I think it's a really good source for information there. But if there's negativity, which there are, because a lot of people just reach out because they're just lowest of the low of their lives, then just take that with a pinch of salt. But the biggest thing to kind of conclude on this point is not to be the victim. Don't feel sorry for yourself. It is tough. It is the cards you've been given, the hand you've been dealt. If you can afford it, you've got the money, then invest in different treatments that you've researched and found out, as some of the guys that you've interviewed have found. But really, don't play the victim. Find a way. Just keep persevering, keep pushing through, try different things, look for different sources of advice, and just make that change yourself, because the majority of doctors aren't going to help you. There is no cure for these things out there that's just readily done like that. So you've got to work on yourself. You've got to work on your health, your diet, your fitness. Something changing to a keto diet or a vegetarian diet for others could be life-changing for you, because all of a sudden you've lost 60% of your inflammation, which has taken away a lot of the pain. So I've seen, myself, I've followed the keto diet quite a few times, and it has a profound effect on me, not just weight loss, but I feel better, sharper, and the inflammation goes down. I think diet's a key thing, and you can take a lot of advice from these groups on diet as well. Food is definitely our medicine. I have my mum in my ear right now. Food is medicine. If you are suffering from these chronic conditions, you can't go out and exercise. Walking the dog is the most I can do now. It's not a case of getting up and getting on with the day, but actually if you take the right medicine in the form of food, you can make a huge difference very specifically to the amount of inflammation in your body. And most of these conditions are related to inflammation. So any way you can work to reduce that is going to help you. So it's kind of a long-winded way, but don't play the victim. There are things you can do for yourself. Find knowledge from these groups and apply them.
Awesome. I think it's a numbers game. It really is. If you keep going and pushing through, you might, hit the jackpot earlier, and kind of, you might see some results pretty quickly, particularly if you get the support of the right doctor. So I know you mentioned, doctors won't help you, but I guess you did have that integrated doctor that did
Yes.
ultimately help you.
Free doctors generally won't help you. A better way to say it, right?
Yeah.
Some of them will, not all of them, and they're fantastic. But they're just not equipped. The science isn't there, and the medicine isn't there to treat these conditions. So it becomes helping the patient manage it. That's all you get.
I think, and then I was speaking to someone about this the other day, getting a doctor that actually, it feels like they're on your team and they care. And I've done a lot of reading on the power of that, and the power of that making you believe that you will recover if you feel like you've got someone in your corner. And so, I just would like to add to, what you've said there, and just getting someone who actually, is willing to go to bat for you and feels like it feels like they care about whether you recover. Just touching on the other points that you said, playing a victim. And I think that has, for me, completely resonates. You might get a few people out there that will be like, well, I am a victim, but the minute you start playing a victim, it actually starts mentally playing into the symptoms, and you can actually make yourself a lot worse. I specifically try to make myself like not complain about like certain things. Like if something will come up and I'm like, I'm aching, or there's an issue with my joints, or I'm feeling particularly tired, I'll try to force myself to not say and complain about it. Not because it doesn't bother me, but because actually when I do complain about it, it doesn't make me feel any better. All it does is just put it out there in the universe that I am this victim. And is that what you meant by that, by the way?
Yeah, I think so. I think don't play the victim in that this is me, this is who I am, I have this condition.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it because the doctors won't help me. And you end up blaming the doctors. And I spent a year, cursing these doctors like, well, he's done a test, there's nothing. And now they're referring me to this guy. And there's this expectation that medicine will cure you because that's the Western society that we live in, where medicine fixes everything, right? Well, that's not the case for the guys suffering from the illnesses that feature on this show and that you've interviewed, because the science isn't there yet, the medicine isn't there yet. And therefore you are not going to get treatment from someone else. You need to go out there and find this yourself. And like I say, there's knowledge and information out there. If you've got the money to find the expert to help you, then that's going to help you, and the money to provide the treatment. But on a personal level, you can make big changes to yourself, which take a lot of commitment to change your diet. You might see big improvements, even if it's 30, 50%, or it gets you out of bed just because you've changed to a more extreme diet, such as only vegetables or keto, or whatever kind of fits your lifestyle. There are things you can do, even if you can't get out and exercise. And so don't be the victim on that side of things. And I completely agree with you in terms of sending energy out into the universe as well. The more positive you can be, you're going to attract that back. I definitely buy into all of that as well. And you've got to be grateful for what you've got and then ask for what you want. And I think that plays a big help too. Yesterday, I went to see a new physio in the village down the road, and she is awesome. And I sat there with her, 40-minute appointment. I must have spent 15 going through my story and everything to start talking about my legs. When I feel pain in my legs, it's the same on both sides, exactly the same time. So I don't have individual problems or anything. And so she kind of understood, empathized with me. And now she's working on a program with me to build up my core to see if we can better take the load off my legs, if you like. And like you say, she's now in my corner. I'm going to see her once or twice a week for at least the next 6 weeks. And now I feel like I have this person with me that's going to support me and really push me on with exercises, hands-on treatment and things like that. And it's just huge. I felt quite emotional sat there when you listen to someone and say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And I think I can help you with this and this. It's just like, thank God you're one of those that can help me, and you're with me there as the trainer rather than good luck, I'm off. And that's huge. So things like that is really, really big.
Awesome. Look, I think that's a really good point to draw the podcast to a close. Just want to thank you for coming on. Your story for me, getting to the point that you've got to in your recovery, is inspiring for someone like me, because I'm not there yet, so I need to keep going. I need to keep pushing through. But also inspiring because you're so successful in launching your business, and you haven't put that on hold, and that's what I'm trying to do as well. And not only that, I mean, what's probably worth saying is that the job you do. So I'm part of this. Matt and I are part of this network of Amazon sellers, Titan Network, and Matt runs this accountability program, which, I mean, I haven't ever asked you, but it must take up, that's a job in itself doing that. So you put your hand up for, you could be doing the bare minimum now, but you're actually pushing and doing more, which again is a fine balance to strike. But again, for me is a real example of really just kind of not letting your condition define you, and also restrict what it is you're deep down you're capable of doing. So yeah, really appreciate you coming on the show and telling the story. Just one last thing, if people wanted to reach out to you and just ask you any questions about your recovery or anything really, your business, is it Facebook the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook as Matt Phipps, or you can drop me a direct email of matt@titanmembers.com. Both of those ways will find their way through to me. If you want to talk anything health or Amazon or e-commerce or business or life, anything, just drop me a line.
Awesome. Cool. Look, thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, to anyone listening, please subscribe so we can reach more people. And yeah, thanks for coming on, mate. And we will catch up very soon.
Thanks, Phil.
Cheers.